Town Auditor, Christine. It's the Christine Eady Show.
Should I go ahead and jump in?
You bet.
Okay. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Christy Racinas, and I have the pleasure of serving as your state auditor. It's always a pleasure to appear before this committee and report to you on our office and operations. I will say it feels really early. I still have Thanksgiving leftovers in my fridge, and here I am at Appropriations.
I still have some on my coat.
I feel like this timeline was a little tight, but I'm here with a smile on my face. So this is a process I take incredibly seriously. Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chair, I brought some of my staff with me today, and I'd like to introduce them, particularly since last year we were virtual and I didn't get to show them off. But we have Adam Grant, who is in charge of our fiscal division. We have Chris Quick, he's in charge of payroll. Jerry Reef is in charge of our technology division. And then Erin Benskin is our newest manager. She's in charge of our accounting division. And then you all know my wonderful and competent deputy and counselor, Edie Troutwine. For those of you who may not know, I think most of you do, but I always like to talk a little bit about what our office does. There's often a little bit of confusion since we're called the state auditor's office and we do not audit. And so that begs the question, what do we do? The Constitution causes me to exist. However, all of my duties are laid out in statute by the legislature. And essentially, we are the chief accountants and payroll officers of the state. So said another way, we pay the bills and keep the books. Responsible for paying all state employees, legislators, National Guard members, and all the related tax payments and reporting. So we make about 10,000 payroll payments a month. And then statutorily, we're also required to maintain the state's electronic accounting system. This system provides state agencies the means to collect revenues, process transactions, manage their budgets, make expenditures, et cetera. And then lastly, the other big thing we have to do is report the annual fiscal affairs of the state, and that is known as the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Essentially, the balance sheet and income statement for the state, only it's substantially larger. It's about 250 pages long. We do that once a year. And that actually is coming up, will be coming up in the next month or two. You'll see that report. I'd like to start with a general update on our office before I jump into the actual budget book. Like I'm sure you will hear over and over, our operations have really revolved around COVID the last 18 months, going on 2 years. During the pandemic, we maintained a physical presence in the office the entire time. There's certain things we can't do electronically, for example, print checks and mail them. But all of our staff have been back in the office full time since early this year. Perhaps our office's most important role during the pandemic has been assisting in managing the frequent and large waves of stimulus money that have been coming into the state. As you know, our office controls payments and vendors, and we worked to maintain strong internal controls around these processes while getting that money out the door as fast as we could into the hands that really needed it. I'm gonna throw out a few numbers, not to bore you, but just to sort of put some color onto what we dealt with over the past year and a half. In calendar year 2019, we added 4,800 new vendors and issued about 7,200 1099s at the end of the year. And in calendar year 2020, we added almost 12,000 new vendors and issued over 14,000 1099s. So essentially, we doubled our workload. Now, your first question, or you may be wondering, well, how did you do that? What were you doing before? Were you sitting around not working half the time because you were able to absorb that volume? And the answer is no. That's the good news. What happened is we worked closely with agencies and heavily leveraged our IT staff who built new program-specific interfaces to automate some of our processes and save hundreds of hours of staff time, both on my staff, but particularly in some of the agency staff that were operating these programs. Two of the biggest examples of that were the business relief programs through the Business Council and then the child care payments through DFS. That was a small dollar amount, for example, but that was thousands of new vendors who have to be, who would have otherwise had to be manually added to the system, checked with the IRS, make sure they're a real person. So anyway, that was a really challenging, but really a very successful process that really allowed us to have close, good relationships with some of our agencies and work through a lot of challenging problems. So I want to talk a little bit about training. We have about 1,000 users of our electronic accounting system. And one of the most important things we do is make sure that they're well-trained and able to use our system. COVID really caused us to tear off the Band-Aid and dial in our virtual training. We've noted now that we're sort of, on the back end is a hard thing to say, but it's clear that a lot of folks still want and need in-person training, but we now offer a combo of virtual and in-person, and that's allowed us to really efficiently reach people, state employees who don't live in Cheyenne or that may be teleworking permanently now. Lastly, I wanted to give you a brief update on YOpen, which is our online checkbook. As you know, we initially launched that in July of 2019. We evaluated the usage and took feedback over a couple of years, and we've rolled out a new and improved YOpen about 6 months ago in July of 2021. And I think when I was here two years before, somebody had asked, will YOpen save us time or money with public records requests now that the information is out there? My answer at that time was, well, I hope so. That would be great. We don't know. I can tell you today that it absolutely does, especially after CARES Act money has come through. We have, I assure you, we would have received so many requests about CARES Act money going out. Just the other day, Edie and I were on a phone call with a gentleman who had made a pretty complex public records request. We pointed him to YOpen, showed him how to use it over the phone, and he's like, this is exactly what you need. Disregard my email. So it's really been a success. As far as numbers go, and I just want to take a moment to remind you, this was put together by in-house staff. And in particular, there's a gentleman who works for me named Christian Dorr, and I'm going to call him out. This was his baby. He created it in-house with his own talent, basically $0. And he's probably sitting at his desk really embarrassed right now, but that's my intent because we're really, really happy to have him. And he keeps it updated. We maintain the whole thing for about $1,300 a year. As an example, we generally had about 700 hits a month up until we started posting CARES Act and ARPA data. We topped out at close to 20,000 hits a month to that website once that data went live. So that's why I'm very, we're proud of it, but I also know that it's saving us a lot of time and effort when it comes to public records requests. Okay, so thank you for allowing me that segue. I'll go ahead and jump into our budget book. It's real little, barely worth your attention. Actually, Mr. Chairman, I'm proud to present a budget that is compared to 10 years ago, 12% smaller in staff and 13% smaller in dollars. If you go back even further, it actually was even bigger back then, but I know we were drowning in money back then, so it's not a great comparison. So I'm going to have you go to page 3, which is an overall snapshot of our budget. You'll see over on the left side that we have 2 divisions, and I'm actually going to address and dispense with the second division first, and that's state employee compensation unit or code 2500. These are funds that are simply parked in our budget, but I don't have purview over them. And that amount comes from the session laws each year. It was section 304 in the 2020 budget bill. And that is for retirees prior to July of 2008, where we pitch in and help cover their retiree premiums. So I'm not an expert on that, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. And I'm sure Director Hibbard could help me out if I can't answer them. Okay. So I'll back up and go ahead and look at 0100. That's the actual funding for the SAO. We only have one unit, and if it's okay, I'm going to have you skip past all the narrative, which I'm sure you have all read and memorized by now anyway, and go to page 13. That consists of our whole budget. So as you can see, Mr. Chairman, we are just over $15 million general fund. Our 100 series funds are 24 employees. And that 100 series, you can see, this is where we have our only exception request. It's a small negative exception request. We're proposing eliminating one position and the associated funding that we do not feel that we need. And this has evolved a little bit over the last 2 years. During the evaluation of HR consolidation, it was determined that this position should not be swept. I think they assigned that 10% of this position was HR. So they did not want the position. They did not feel that was appropriate, but they took the HR duties. When this position went vacant shortly thereafter, the individual retired, we evaluated our workload and structure and decided that the remaining duties could be transferred to existing staff with some small commensurate adjustments. And additionally, Mr. Chairman, our number one priority right now, and I know I've spoken to several of you about this, maybe not everyone, is getting the ACFR done accurately and well and in a timely manner. Our accounting division that does that has been severely underinvested in for several years. Additionally, and I know you all are familiar with this, we've talked about it more from the treasurer's side of the office, but the ACFR has become drastically more complex, particularly over the last 5 years, mainly due to bringing the investments in-house. That's why we're having these, hours-long meeting about in-kind transfers. Anyway, all of that trickles down and is just causing the ACFR to become really complex, very difficult, and requiring a very high level of knowledge. So we think it is critical that both the manager of the accounting division and their number 2 be CPAs. That was not the case prior. We had both of those positions turn over in the last year, and that little bump in pay that we removed from this position allowed to fill us to fill both of those positions with CPAs. So we're not where we want to be, but that certainly got us closer. Our initial plan, Mr. Chairman, was to potentially fill this position in a part-time capacity, but we just don't think that's necessary, and we're proposing it for elimination. So moving on, in our 200 series, we have a fairly basic, basic budget items that fund the normal operations of our office. We have a pretty healthy supplies budget. You'll notice this is mostly due to very specialized warrant stock. And then remembering we issue all W-2s, 1099s, and 1095s. We certainly try to get everybody to get their W-2s electronically, but people still like paper. For sure. So you'll notice, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chair, the bulk of our budget sits in the 900 series as well as code 0292 in the 200 series. This is for the management, hosting, and maintenance of our electronic accounting system. An acronym I know you've heard over the years and is used in kind of a variety of ways is ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning System. And this is the state's ERP that we are purchasing and we pay for. ERP systems just tie together a multitude of business processes and allow us to do our job. Like things I was talking about before, pay the bills, pay employees, et cetera, et cetera. So we pay about $4.7 million a year for this system. And we are in year 6 of a 12-year contract. We are currently on the second most current release of their system. So we're not the most current, we're one behind, That is by design. If there's one thing I've learned in my time in state government is you don't really ever want to be the first thing to do or the first entity to do anything with a large software vendor. So we've waited till they have multiple clients on the most current release, and we're actually upgrading to the most current version of the product over the next 18 months. And let's see, that finishes up the 900 series. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes what I had to say today, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions for the auditor? So I do have one or two questions. So in the last year, have you given any pay raises other than the upgraded positions, or have you upgraded any other positions other than the CPA position?
Mr. Chairman, we have made, I can think of two, we brought two positions to market. Let me grab that so I get it more accurate. And again, Mr. Chairman, just to note, those positions in the CPA positions, those were not pay raises. They were vacated and we brought in the folks we hired at the 2017 market.
So that partly answers my next question. Was with this pay increase that is being proposed by the governor, how will that impact your office? I mean, how many of you do you have at market already?
Mr. Chairman, we have tried, I know, I can think of at least two positions that we brought up to the 2017 market. And I can give you an exact number of how many people we have at market. Give me 2 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, are those two positions the CPA positions, or are they two other positions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, two other positions. They were positions that we identified. And for a little context, I'm not trying to make excuses, but just a little context. This was right after the major budget cuts. And as the stimulus money was dumping down on our office, we identified a couple positions that were a very high risk of turnover and also very high risk of critical impact to our office if those were to vacate. And so those were the two that we brought up to market. Those were different than the CPA positions. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, of the 23 folks we have right now, and so that's not including the position we're proposing for elimination. We have 14 that are not at the 27, that are below the 2017 market. We have 8 that are that we've been able, that are at least market. And then I guess mine doesn't really count because I don't have a market.
Well, it counts. Okay, thank you. That's the only questions I have.
Okay.
Other questions for the audience? Please.
So we had talked, I think, that's probably a year ago, about the maintenance agreements. You'd gone out and I think you had gone out and negotiated them. And so this is the amount that you've negotiated through the remainder of the biennium. Is that right? This is on the maintenance agreements for the accounting system.
So, Mr. Chairman, that the maintenance agreements for the accounting system, those are wrapped into the entire 12-year contract. Okay. So we negotiated a reduced rate, but for the entire remainder of the contract.
And so is this going to be flat for the next? We're going to be halfway through it, so we're going to be.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, that's correct, and that's just to add a little perspective to that. I think when we came in and we were roped into this 12-year contract, we use terms like that. We're roped into this 12-year contract. It has not been the worst thing that has happened to us, if that makes sense. Having a guaranteed level of service at a guaranteed cost is pretty valuable. And I know that that's something that this committee and other agencies have struggled with. Additionally, our vendor, who is certainly not perfect, but we have a good relationship with, really came to the table and helped us make those cuts, and they were under zero obligation to do that. They could have said, we have a contract, you pay us what you signed for.
And then the next question I have on the supporting services, what are the supportive services? Is that just the enterprise services you receive? Enterprise-wide service. This is on supporting services under. Oh, I'm sorry, never mind. So then going down to contract services, we've got 88.3 million and change in contract services. What are those? That's CPA and what else?
Nope. So Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, the big electronic accounting system contract is a total of 4.7 a year. So 4.7 times 2 for the biennium. And based on the portions of the contract, that's split between 0901 and 0292. The additional services we have, so the overwhelming majority of those two numbers, those big numbers, the 1.5 in 0292 and the 8.3 in 0901, is the electronic accounting system. Other things is we contract out for the mailing and production of 1099. So that's one. We also amend our staff with one person during the ACFR season to try to help us out. What else am I missing? Yep. Okay.
And where's the number? Is the outside CPA not paid through your office?
Mr. Chairman, the external auditors are paid through the Department of Audit.
Okay.
You mean the big external auditors?
Yeah.
Yep. Independence causes us to not be really involved in that contractual relationship.
All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Any further questions? Please.
So you reduced the contract, which was wonderful. How much was the reduction?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schwartz. So the contract reduction for the budget cuts last year, we took a total of 1.2 million biennially off that contract. It was all Edie. Mr. Chairman, she's a master negotiator.
Okay, any further questions? I guess we're done.
Thank you, Mr.
Ooh.
Chairman. Happy budget hearings. Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, welcome.
Hi,
Ron, nice to
guys.
see you again.
Yeah, I haven't seen you.
It
in
seems
a
like I
while.
just saw you yesterday.
And the day before, and the week before, and the day before. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, Don's going to be going over most of this stuff here. There's a couple of issues that when I get to them that I'll speak on, and those were some denials and exception requests on a topic that I think that you and the co-chairman and the other folks on the CAP Finance Committee are very well aware of. But I would just necessarily say, I think that the biggest areas of increase have nothing to do with our office. They're essentially pass-through programs on your different veteran exemption programs. So those things, they're there every year. You get a little bit more every.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask, Mr. Treasurer, could you move the microphone a little bit closer?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Make sure it echoes. There we go.
That's better.
Okay, so, yeah, just as a kind of an overall, I think our biggest exception requests are in the areas of pass-throughs, and that's in the veterans programs. So I'll turn it over to Don to walk you through this, and when you get to those areas that I think concern all of us there in some different positions and directions that we want the investment process to go, dive into those a little bit more.
Okay, great. Don?
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, and good afternoon, committee. My name is Dawn Williams. I'm the deputy supervisor. In his budget reduction or instructions to agents, the governor asked us to broadly decrease what is required to serve. He asked us to look at coordination and efforts. I come to you today with a budget that not only reflects the governor's direction, most importantly, the treasurer's desire for transparency and efficiency that comes from being responsible for the state's wealth now numbering over $25 billion. The treasurer's office sustained 20% general fund budget reduction last year, 10% in each of the step 2 and step 3 reductions rounds. And just for good measure, you all came in and reduced our travel budget another $15,000. Despite these losses, we continue to persevere and presented a budget that exemplifies attempted efficiencies within our means. Unfortunately, we were met with resistance in this effort. We attempted to realign existing positions to current needs by making 3 requests to reclassify existing positions, which would have resulted in a reduction in general funds of $444,428 and an increase to special revenue of $769,427, which is a net increase of $324,999 for the biennium, again, to support $25 billion. As you can see from the summary table on page 13, these requests were denied. We'll certainly discuss them more fully as we proceed through the budget, so let's get started. Our first unit is a 101, and it is found on page 15. The 16 is where the actual 101 starts. The governor approved the standard budget, and we do have a few exception requests. This is our administration budget and primarily funded with general fund. This is where the treasurer and I and our reception positions are located. First, of course, is on that page 17. It's the HR Consolidation Request. We moved our HR position to A&I, and the governor did approve this request. We have found this consolidation to be challenging and have yet to see any efficiencies as a result of the move. What used to take me 5 minutes, well, didn't even take me because I had an HR person, but now I'm doing HR responsibilities. I could go next door, ask my HR person. It now can take up to 3 or 5 days to get just a position posted because they have other agencies ahead of us. They've got to get payroll done. They've got to do timesheets. They got to do whatever. So it hasn't proved to be, we're not a fan. Let's just say that. The next exception request is on page 18. This request was to move a vacant position to unit 0905 for repurposing it to a compliance officer as an accounting position. As we continue to grow, there are compliance requirements that are being borne by our current staff attorneys and investment team. We anticipate this position will relieve those duties, assume some additional ones, and assist with the annual statewide audit. And the governor did actually approve this request. The next exception begins on the bottom of page 18 and carries on to the top of page 19.
Don, if I can interrupt just for a second. On the HR person that went back to A&R, in terms of the actual job that person did in your office, how much time was actually in HR?
100%.
So that's my question. Was there a need for an HR person on a daily
Absolutely.
basis?
Yep.
Just explain that.
So we have a lot of, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. We have a lot of HR issues in our agency, from folks with FMLA to we have a person that is pursuing permanent residency status.
We have a lot of turnover. We get new positions. Every one of those requires a position description. And the iterations for A&I, you have to submit the same form 3 times to post a position. First, you have to say what you want to pay for it. Then you say what you're going to pay for it. And then what you did pay for it. I mean, there's a lot of iterations that HR person handled through the process of getting a person hired just to post a position. If we do reclassifications, that person worked on policy. It was just, we took all of the, when the treasurer and I came to the office, it was very clear that our HR person could not do the things that some agency HR folks traditionally do, like pay bills, or she did the workers' comp reconciliation. All of the workers' comp claims went through her. Just everything HR related. She didn't do any reception. She didn't do any, we took records retention away from her. There's just no time for that. It was 100% HR duty. So that's a huge loss for us.
Okay, thank you.
So let's see, the next request is on the bottom of 19. And this, during this current biennium, we moved a position from our unclaimed property unit to the admin unit, and that was on a B11. And we had wanted to, that the person in unclaimed property had been hired to do sort of an upgrade for the CAP system for unclaimed property. That system is up and running, and we found a need that we could really use this person to do some of these, some initiatives in the admin unit, public information officer, financial literacy. So we moved that position, and that subsequently that person did receive an opportunity to leave us, and he left, and it left that vacant. So we wanted to fill that position for a paralegal. We had asked for that position or some kind of funding in the last biennium for a paralegal, and we did receive it. However, it ended up not being enough. We weren't able to fill the position at that level. So what we are doing is asking for this position to be make the move permanent to this 101 unit, and adding some additional funding to try to go back and find a person to fill it as a paralegal. We would have to reclassify it. Our attorneys are overloaded, so this position is critical. The governor denied this request, citing the pending report to be submitted regarding House Bill 244. As you know, as many of you know, since you're on CapFin, let me just say that House Bill 244 doesn't really address our need for a paralegal. And so that was a disappointing reaction. It doesn't, and besides which, I find it difficult to build a budget on what the legislature may or may not do with a study, nor can I rely on the passage of any resulting legislation. And as a result, we are certainly confused by this denial and really respectfully request your reconsideration of this request.
Please.
So this paralegal, where's this, what's this paralegal? What part of the operation are they in, and where do they spend most of their time?
We don't have one, Mr. Chairman.
But I mean,
Where they would, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, would be to assist. We have 2 attorneys in the office. One is funded with investment revenue, and the other is funded with general funds. And so the resulting request for this position, for funding of this position, was half and half in investment revenue and half in general funds, and they'd be supporting each attorney. And what the attorneys end up doing is a lot of that. You're more well-versed in what they do than I do, I think, than I am, but a lot of paperwork, a lot of tax filings. We have a multiple document. It's just a lot of busy work that they do that they would really like some assistance with.
And so the, as we look at the various iterations we've talked about over the last couple of years on reorganization of the office, and so ultimately, I mean, some of those folks are going to be in, primary in compliance and other issues related to the investing arm, and some are not. Some are related to the other functions of your office. And so, I mean, that's why that's basically the same. And the reason is that the rationale for the splitting between half to general fund and half to, because you got one attorney in each section. This one's going to support both initially.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Please go ahead. Representative Stitt.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, thank you. On the paralegal issue, can you maybe flesh out a little bit more what the paralegal would be doing? I know that was the same question that you just got asked, but when I think of where I can really use a paralegal, it's when I've got 20,000 documents or 100,000 documents I have to organize, or some real labor-intensive but tedious activity, right? But if your office isn't doing litigation, because that would be over in the Attorney General's office. So I mean, I'd like to have a paralegal, just help me with my life. That'd be nice.
Yes.
But how do you know you need one is my question.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I know I need one because my attorneys keep telling me. That's how I know, to be honest. But I do see them. We have attempted to secure the assistance of maybe front office staff to do some of these. There's with these investment contracts, there are some very tedious and laborious requirements that our attorneys need to attend to with paperwork filing. And in general, that's what they need help with. It's the, if this person, if they could find someone with a skill set to be able to do some pre-work on those documents, pre-completion. We do, since we invest throughout the world, we have agreements with multiple countries, and each of them has a different, of course, set of requirements for their tax scheme and structures. We do a lot of work with, we have a firm that that identifies places where firms that may have gone, I'm trying to be careful, bankrupt, or whether we have an opportunity to recover some losses because of mismanagement, certainly. So we work with a firm that identifies those, but there's a process of having to file the necessary paperwork to be able to, a party to those filings so we can recover some of those funds. It's a lot of paperwork. Oh, well, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the treasurer was reminding me that we do have a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests that conceivably, I suppose, that they would help our attorneys complete.
Mr. Chairman.
1 second. Go ahead, Representative Larson.
So, Dawn, are your attorneys behind?
Mr. Chairman, no, but they're overworked.
I'm not, can you help me define that? So does that mean that they're having to put in a lot more time than that? And that's what I'm trying to get my head around, because my kids used to think they were overworked, and I argued that point some, okay? And so the demands exceed the time that they should.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, thank you for putting that in a much more eloquent manner. They do work in excess of the hours that one might traditionally expect from a state employee. They're working nights and weekends. I have one of our attorneys has a very sick child, and she's working from the hospital room while he takes naps to try to keep up. So there's a significant amount of work that needs to be done. And I believe that the addition of some kind of assistance for my team, for those legal folks, my attorneys, would be not a waste of taxpayer funds.
Senator Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Don.
Hi.
You said this position was someone that was working in the unclaimed property, and you want to morph it over to paralegal. But you couldn't make it with money that was allocated. What's the price difference you're looking at?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for asking. I think it's maybe $20,000 over the biennium.
And that's what you're reflecting here on page 19.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the reason the amount is in total is because the position became unfunded in the unclaimed property unit. So when it came into this unit, it has no money associated with it. So I have to ask for the whole.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, there, whether or not 244 passes or not, I think is kind of irrelevant. If it does pass, there's even going to be more work for paralegal because all the contracts have to be put in a different entity's name, and it's going to be an exceedingly huge, heavy lift, you know, for the staff that's there. So, you know, this is one of those positions that it's needed now, but it will be even needed more in the future, depending on what the structure is present. So it's one of those things that it's just the workload of the office, and the workload of the office gets bigger and bigger every year, irregardless of the structure, and depending on the structure and transitional aspects, the workload of this individual could fill in.
Mr. Larson.
So, Don, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don, we talked a little bit about the denial being based on the pending report on 244. But if 244, just say in most dramatic approach was adopted and we had this segregation of responsibilities in the treasurer's office, would the two attorneys that we're referencing here still have the same responsibilities that they currently have, or do you see that burden being shifted? I'm just trying to see if that moved forward, if there would still be a need for this person.
So, Mr. Chairman, thanks for asking. Since the Capital Select Committee meeting yesterday, I've had a chance to think about that. And in fact, we've kind of tossed that around. My suggestion would be that both attorneys would move to the investment firm, and then the resulting paralegal would go with them. The duties that would remain in the treasurer's office then that primarily require the attention of attorney, we would utilize the services of the Attorney General's office, similar to any other agency.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, please continue, Don.
Mr. Chairman, continuing on page 19, at the bottom, there's another request to reclassify a position. We had asked to move this position and reclassify it for another accountant. The governor's denial of this request is on page 20 and again cites House Bill 244. Our rationale still stands. However, since we submitted our budget, we determined that we actually do need to fill that position that is vacant, that we were requesting to move. And so we anticipate that will be one of the positions that I mentioned yesterday that will be filled by January 1st. And that is for a support staff person.
And Don, is that one of the positions that we approved last year? Or is this a reclassification?
Oh, no, Mr. Chairman, this is one we've had vacant for a little while. We had used it, the funding for it to supplement some other positions, which I know you're going to ask me about later. Yeah, so
yeah, this is the position that you used that for the pay increases, and I think total 115,000 or something like that.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if it's that much, but we have used some of it to do that. So back to this, Mr. Chairman, if you do consider giving us a new position, we would need a position. The request for funding in the budget coming up would be the same, because this would have been a swap of general fund for special revenue. So we would just need an additional position should you elect to.
And so, Don, I think one of the things that we will need, because as you know, we've got a working group that's working on finalizing and looking at this, the 244, in addition to the 121, is how you would break that up in your office, and who and where would they would go, and what you would need, if you may need something additional in one or the other offices as this transition, if it takes place, happens, so that we can calibrate that into as we put it together and kind of work with your office on how, not only on how many you need, but how we would effectuate it as we move forward. So
Mr. Chairman, I actually think based on the, I wrote and we made our request prior to the meeting yesterday. So I think actually based on what your directions were yesterday, this may be one of those things that you'd like to consider. How should the bill, a bill be offered as a result of the IFC report? Again, though, I desire to hedge my bet, so to speak, because what if that doesn't pass and I still need an accountant? So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to work with you and have actually already started putting together a roadmap, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
And so while we're talking about that, so going back on, so we're going to go back and just touch on a couple things you just talked about, Dawn, and so I think we authorized 2 additional accountant positions last year. Those are filled. Then this one is going to be a 3rd accountant position. And so when we put the people that are in the financial accounting, they're supporting the investment function. How many of those do we have now? How many are in the office now?
Mr. Chairman, counting the 2 supervisors, we have 7. No,
7.
9 with the supervisor, 9.
9, not including the supervisor.
No, 7, not including 9 with the 2 supervisors.
Okay, with the 2 supervisors. And then how many investment people do we have in the
We
office
have
now?
7.
How many?
We have 7 filled,
7.
authorized. So that's the part that I'm struggling. Like we have, how many do we
Yeah.
have authorized? How many do we have filled?
Right. Now, I was just wondering that. I mean, I've heard Patrick say it a number of times that, it's his rule of thumb is 2 to 1. 2
Mr. Chairman,
accountants
I've
to
heard that as
1
well.
finance guy. So I just wondered where we were in all that. So thank you.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, we're way behind. It's sufficing,
Yeah.
about half.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I want to caution our representations today because Don is working on this. None of these things have actually been, we haven't really sat down and done a thorough analysis and study. These are, first draft cuts as far as where people may or may not go. A lot of it depends on the definition of investment. A lot of it depends on a lot of different things as far as where the cake gets sliced and in different areas in there. What I want to try to do is look at more of a big picture as far as what is really necessary, for the office today and moving into the structure that could be there and trying to get the budget and the flexibility to move forward in that area. And coming back to some of the things that we've done before, that we've all worked on as far as the different reports that we've gotten back, the different staffing requirements, the things that you mentioned and Patrick mentioned as far as those ratios that were in CLA and other reports, trying to get that big tight picture and move forward a lot like we did the build out of the investment area where we essentially had, positions. We weren't sure whether they were going to go in fixed income or whether they're going to go in equities or whether they're going to go in real assets. But it was like trying to find the talent when it shows up. And that's where you kind of hit the talent slots with that and just making sure that we had the focus on the bigger picture and the flexibility for the folks in the IFC and the Treasurer's Office to work collaboratively with you to move forward on that process as we did in the build out. I kind of see this as a total type of a build out.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree at all. I mean, and regardless of 244 side, the investment function is happening. It's going to happen whether, even if no matter what form, if 244 passes or what form it passes in, that's a year to a year and a half away from being put into effect. We've probably realistically, at least to the end of 2020, to the end of the fiscal year 2023, we're going to be functioning somewhat fairly similar to what we are now. Maybe, we'll be making those adjustments if they happen gradually, but the office still has to function. You still got to do the accounting. You still got to keep up with it. And so I appreciate that. And I think we understand that this is a bit of a moving target. So what you're asking, I get it, right? My understanding is you're asking for what you need now going forward. This isn't about 244. This is where you're at now and what you need to satisfy from your view, what you need to satisfy your operation now and into the next, at least for the next.
There are a few key positions in the middle upper management that I'd like to get before the next election cycle. And those are things that that if we can, and we've got one of them in here, and we didn't ask for 2 or 3. We didn't ask for the support staff, necessarily, but I think when you look at the overall basis point type budget, those things are some discussions that we've had in office and want to have some, specific discussions with you guys. That necessarily we don't build it out by position, but we build it out by a range of skill sets and capacities and potential salary ranges, and give the process enough flexibility to move forward. But I'd like to try to get some capacity in that upper middle management for the chance for some continuity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So just a couple of different questions. I'm kind of just walking through various notes and comments. So my understanding is that when Katie was out in October, that we got behind in certain reporting obligations, particularly related to the COVID CARES Act dollars. With the inference being that you've got a situation where one person is critical, where in other words, you don't have a backup who can do the same function in the same time frame and in the same competency. So my question is, in two different components to that. Number one, what are you doing to address that problem and fix it so that if you have a key personnel out, you've got backup for them? That's the first. And then the next question is, how much of that will be part of the Broadbridge upgrade and that training process for who that person is as you incorporate this upgrade into your systems through now to July 1st?
Mr. Chairman, thanks for asking. Right. So I always hesitate. I don't want it to sound like excuses. Every accountant that we add, we're building the bench, and we are getting some really great people. But we had, not only did we had 4 cases of COVID. We have somebody on maternity leave. We have somebody that had pneumonia, and we had somebody who was out with a gravely ill spouse. And if you count that, that's all of our people.
That's all your new people.
That's all our people. So the perfect storm again happened to SDO. And I don't like to come in. It feels like it's excuses, but it was real. And so, and then we had a person leave. So if you're, that's the people.
Well, have you considered a mask at home mandate?
Yeah, I tell these guys all the time, I cannot control what you do away from here, but we have people who do wear masks. We have telework 2 days a week. So
So my other question, following up on that, is my understanding is that your office is, through the COVID era, has gone into like 2 or 3 days out of the work week, you're working at home.
Uh-huh.
And if that's the case, and you have new folks coming on, it would seem to me that would make it particularly more difficult to train those folks in the auspices of your office and the Broadbridge applications. Maybe not, maybe they can do the training at home, but I'm just curious how that has impacted your ability as well.
Well, Mr. Chairman, when COVID hit in March of 2020, we had just hired one of our accounting managers and our receipts person. We had no choice but to train virtually. And we did that with great success. We added another person in December of 2020. He was in Michigan for a year, or not a year, a month before he was able to move out. We hired him and said, we'll start training you now, send you a computer, because we needed the help. And so he was virtually trained until he arrived. And then just recently, we hired another person from Wisconsin who we also gave another month to get here and get settled, but we sent him a computer and started training him. So we've had really good luck with that. And I think all of our vendors have adapted, of course, with our with our build out, or sorry, build up with our software enhancements, we are doing all of that virtually with our vendors, and we've all become very adept at, as have you, with virtual and electronic communication. So it's working pretty well, and the staff loves it. I don't necessarily love having everybody away because I'm there all day, so I miss them and I want them to be there, but they love it and they appreciate it, and it is good for morale on top of everything else.
And Mr. Chairman, you know, with our build out on the accounting package, we put together a lot of modules that the software developers have for each workstation. And so that actually doubles as a educational instructional tool for people that are onboarded and for cross-training within different areas within the office. So it's, we're really embracing the technology that's out there, and it's really allowed us to leverage in a lot of different areas, and actually, I think, enhance training opportunity for these folks.
Go ahead. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you. So have you noticed any difference in productivity between employees working at home versus working in the office?
Mr. Chairman, no, we haven't.
So just to follow up on this, on the bridge, broad bridge upgrade. In your agency challenges and risks, you talk about you have begun to utilize a risk assessment tool, implementation of an investment analytics system, deployment of an order management system. Are those all three different things?
Mr. Chairman, yes, they are. So we use Aladdin for risk analysis. We use OMS is going to, our order management system is OMS, and that is going to be through Bloomberg. And you asked me something else there. And then, of course, Broadridge is the accounting, the investment accounting package.
Yeah,
So they're all,
so that's the investment analytics system.
investment analytics is also the BlackRock Aladdin.
And so we
Mr.
talked
Chairman,
about,
where are you? I'm
so
trying to
this,
keep up
this is
with you.
just on page 5 of their agency challenges and risk.
Okay,
priorities.
thank you.
So then you talked about it being up and running in full swing by July 1st. And we talked a little bit about what is your calendar of events in order to effectuate that, you know, starting today, moving forward. Is that something that you have written out that you could just email to us so we can, and then I think it would be helpful for us as you meet a milestone that's on this to kind of let us know so we can kind of keep tabs on it. Just because I think it helps, gives us a comfort zone. And because, you know, this issue has been essentially circulating since you came on board.
That's right.
And the need for it is a constant concern and has been. I just think it would be helpful for us to understand that timeline and how it's moving forward. And help you if we can. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took that note yesterday to send you as soon as we sign that statement of work, which is supposed to be Friday. I'm going to send you all that. And I would be happy to send you emails with good news.
Okay, wonderful. Go ahead.
So, I mean, it's a what's the name? Blackbridge?
BlackRock Aladdin. Aladdin is the software. But
I
it's
thought we had
offered
an
through
Enbridge or
BlackRock
a
Manager.
Blackbridge
A
or
Broadbridge.
Broadridge is our
Broadridge,
accounting.
thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
So I mean, and so as we do those, so you've got the statement of work. Have they also provided you as a vendor with some kind of critical path thing so that you can know where these milestones are and you can kind of mark them off as they get done?
Mr. Chairman, sure, a project Gantt chart. They're hiring a project manager. We have a project manager. Since fully utilizing her, Jeanette Beeman, she used to work at the auditor's office. And that was one thing that Pat Arp did before she left the treasurer's office, was to bring Jeanette on. And that has been key in this process to onboard all of these systems. She's just fantastic. And she is a taskmaster and she has these guys nailed down. And But that's not to say that they haven't been great to work with as well. They're understanding and giving that back. But yes, we sure do. It just has to be like that.
No, perfect. And so, I mean, that's obviously easy way. When she's emailing everybody else on stuff, she can just include us in
Oh, great. Okay.
emails on that. I mean,
Mhm.
we're not asking for special, we just want to know how this moves along. So we're as eager, I don't know if we're as eager as you are to have it. We're very eager. to
Probably
have it.
close.
Well, in this area too, we're also holding ourselves accountable, making sure that the process goes smoothly. So the development team has everything that they need when they need it. They have total open access to everything that they need. We've got it all on electronic format that for the basis, but anything we're totally accessible to them. You know, basically, so there isn't any, well, you didn't get it to me on time and anything like that. So we're holding ourselves accountable as well as holding the developers accountable.
Good to hear.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next unit is a 102. It's called Investment Funds Committee, and it's on page 24. The governor approved the standard budget, and there are no exceptions. Unit 0301 is on page 29. This is a veterans tax exemption. Recall that the state treasurer's office is merely a pass-through agency for this program. We simply write the checks after the county and the Department of Revenue have determined these amounts to be reimbursed. The governor approved our standard budget, and we have 2 exception requests. The first is also on page 29, moving on to page 30. This request is for $2,380,157 general fund dollars effective immediately so that we can reimburse the counties for veterans tax exemptions. You recall last year, I'm sure during budget cuts, this unit sustained a 10% budget cut with every other general fund unit in our agency. And as a result, but there was no consequencing modification of statutory language, and the language is clear in statutes that that we shall reimburse them, that the state shall reimburse the counties. So we're here asking for that to make up this deficit in this biennium. And of course, the next exception request is on page 30. It's number 2, and this one is to not only accommodate the shortfall in this current biennium, but also to plan for an increase in the next biennium.
So committee, this is probably a good time. I'd like to get the committee's perspective on whether or not we ought to resurrect that bill but modify it so that it's more of 2 things. Go back to, it used to be that those veterans exemptions were only 10 years long, so they had a life to them, or a lifetime amount that they could receive. So, or take it, instead of reducing it by I think we're about 40%, or I forgot the number we ultimately got to when we worked that bill, but obviously it didn't pass through. If we ought to bring the bill back up between now and session, but make it forward thinking so that we implement changes over time and put a caps on it over time, so that because the way this is going now, this is going to be an ongoing obligation forever. And because of the number of deployed individuals, we were out of Afghanistan, but we've got a long way to go for a new generation of people that will be qualifying for this, to kind of get us going down a path. But these are limited dollars, limited numbers, not lifetime benefits for, particularly for non-veteran or folks that never left stateside, or how we want to do it. So my question is, should we revisit that issue in a bill this session? Because if we do, we need to get a draft going now. And we can decide this, next couple of days, but just put that in the back of your minds on if you think it is a worthwhile endeavor and a cost-effective thing.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So refresh my recollection, what we started out with in the bill, and I recall it got pretty heavily amended by process.
Don, can you give us the specifics?
Mr. Chairman, there were two bills, actually. House Bill 149 would have lowered the maximum assessed property valuation. Right now, that's at $3,000 per veteran. Would have cut that back 10% to $2,700 and would have saved about $400,000 per year. House Bill 172 would have lowered the amount to $2,100 and saved approximately 1.2 million per year.
So all that did was,
It was a reduction in the maximum qualification. Now, I believe it was a couple of years ago, this committee also looked at changing the qualifications.
yeah. Okay,
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the second, well, are you?
go ahead, Kevin.
Properly, the agency, in this case, it is flow through, but they did make a request for priority 1 to be one time effective immediate. And the next one is the governor's recommendation is one time. Just wanted to make sure that on priority number 7, we understood it was one time.
And that's because it's already been paid out or past due.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. What will happen is that the money's already gone. We just got to pick it up to pieces and it's got to be effective immediate so that they can transfer the funds. That's a one-time deal. And then the next one is to pick up the next biennium's portion. And then the governor's recommendation on that is also one time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's just what I was leading into. So thank you, Kevin. I presume the governor elected to make this one time with the hopes that the legislature would address it. But I did appreciate that his approval included the increase because it just does increase. And Mr. Chairman, from Don's remarks, you'll see that the proposed decreases in the property tax exemption were not the amount to be recovered. While it mitigated it, it certainly didn't cover the shortfall. And I just thought I would point that out. Let's see, let's move on to unit 0601, and that is on page 35. This is the, we have a division for investments and accounting, and this is the investments division. The governor approved the standard budget and there are no exception requests. The next unit is 0602 accounting, and that's on page 42. The place for the governor's rec on our standard budget would normally be on page 43, but it says state budget department's recommendation. I believe this is just a typo and I've assumed that the governor approved our standard budget. There's one exception request in this unit, and that's on page 45. All of our accounting positions in the agency are funded with special revenue, except for this position 22. And so we, to be consistent, have made a request to reduce general fund by $227,675 and increase it by $225,465. You'll see the numbers are different, and that is because the incumbent, this position was funded for the incumbent who left to go to DEQ, and she had longevity and she had family insurance. And when we fund a vacant position, we use single insurance. So that's the difference there. It's just in the benefits. This funding swap was also denied by the governor. We made this request to create these efficiencies and to be consistent, and hope that you will reconsider the budget or the governor's recommendation or denial. The next unit is 0603 on page 48. This is WyoStar 1. The governor approved the standard budget and there are no exceptions. Unit 0604 WyoStar 2 is on page 52. The governor approved the standard budget and there are no exceptions here either. The next budget is 0801, and that's starting on page 57, where the governor did approve the standard budget. And there is one exception on page 59. As a reminder, this is the other side of that position we talked about in Unit 0101 for the paralegal. This position is currently vacant and unfunded. The governor denied our request, and we do ask you to reconsider that denial. The next unit is 0901. As we enter the 900 division, I want to bring to your attention that during the budget hearings last year, you asked us to, we had attempted to combine all of our investment positions and all of our accounting positions, and you said, no, you'd like to have us keep those separate, and moreover, pull out the positions from 0901 that were accounting and other admin type positions, basically not accounting or investments, and to make separate units, which we've done. So unit 0901 is the internal investment division, and these are the investment team members. This starts on page 64, and the governor did approve the standard budget. We have one exception request on page 67, and this is a position, this is a request for a new position and funding for a chief strategy officer, excuse me. The governor did deny this position, but I believe the treasurer would like to speak with you. He kind of alluded to it in his opening remarks, and he'd like to talk to you about that a little.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and this is one of those, I guess I'd call them upper management positions. And the primary aspect of this position is to take basically some of the load off of Patrick's plate, because he's got too many things on his plate, and he spends too much time on other things rather than investing. So we wanted to get a person that had that capability. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do was to get a chief strategy officer in there. And this goes back to a conversation that I had with Russell Reed and a subsequent interview with a chief strategy officer from Abu Dhabi. And we spent about, probably a good 2 hours on the phone with this chief strategy officer in Abu Dhabi. And how that person necessarily worked was he wasn't over the CIO. He was kind of sitting out there between the CEO and the CIO. And they actually look at different strategies in as far as implementation on tactical and strategic, and where asset allocation is depending on who you talk to, 80 to 95% of where your revenue comes from is what you buy. I wanted to have an emphasis on that particular aspect with a full-time employee, and necessarily these are one of these positions where the type of employee that's available and the skill set is whether or not you could get somebody that could do this job. We have another, I think, a very important need in that area, and that's in the area of private equities and private credit. And there happens to be an individual that I think would be available to us that essentially is a CIO at this point in time in another state. But our salary schedule with the performance pay that you guys have provided would, I think, allow us to get this individual in. That definitely has that capability to take a lot of things off of Patrick's plate. But if he's available, it has the capability to help match McGosh and in private equity, which is where our asset allocations have changed in the last year with the reference portfolio. And that would really kind of bolster that aspect of it there. So really, though, I see these higher level positions as kind of dependent on what kind of individual and what kind of skills are out there at a price that we can afford that actually fits into our overall strategic plan of adding the best available talent to kind of like building the football team. We're looking for the best receiver, but if a linebacker shows up, you plug them in if you can afford them, because you need both things. But you need one person that has the capabilities to do that. So that's something that might come up. And I think that what we do is ask for the funding of this. make it in consultation with the IFC, so we can get the best person that's out that's in the market to fulfill those characteristics as far as trying to keep some continuity between one elected official cycle and another elected official cycle. Because I look at this one as evolving into a position that essentially would be an IFC employee rather than a Treasury employee. And that's where you get the continuity. And so that's something that we'd like to move forward with. The Chief Strategy Officer, I think, is extremely important. I don't want to give up on that. I'll give you a specific area. During COVID, and I think this was during the legislative aspect of COVID, we put about $450, $500 million to work when the market was down about 20 to 23%. The market continued to drop to over 43% down. And that was one of the things that I had talked to Patrick about putting some more money on the table at that time. But we eventually did not do that. It didn't happen. I think we had the capacity to do it, but I couldn't convince Patrick that that was something to do. And it's something that talking at the WRS, that asking Mika from Makita, that essentially all of their people and every one of their people tried to rebalance during that down period, and some of them didn't have the capacity because they weren't set up to do it, but got it on the upswing. But she said every one of her funds did some rebalancing during that time period, and we missed that opportunity. Where I think it's really important to get enough capacity of peers within the organization that when these different critical tactical situations come up, that Patrick and the folks that have the capacity to look at these things actually can sit down, talk about it, and make some good informed decisions between each other.
Go ahead, Senator Green.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer.
Yes.
I want to make sure I understand your previous testimony.
I'm sorry.
I want to make sure, I'll get closer, thanks. I want to make sure I understand what I just thought I heard you say. And I think I heard you say it yesterday, and so I'm glad I get this opportunity. What I thought I heard you say, that you were talking to the CIO about making an investment and that you couldn't convince him to do that at that particular moment in time, and that then this position, and you're using that as a rational or a justification, that having this position that you're calling for here, this Chief Strategy Officer, would in what way help that? What I'm trying to figure out here is how does that work exactly? Based on what we talked about yesterday in CapFin, I'm just trying to get a picture of that, how that works. So maybe I'm missing something, but, and probably true, but just want to make sure I got it clear in my head.
Well, I guess how that works is there's when I look at convincing people, I have a better opportunity as a former legislator to probably convince another legislator in a topic that I have an area expertise in. And what I want to do is bring in a person that has expertise in different areas of investment. And so it's like you have two colleagues talking to each other on the same level of understanding of investment, in that regard, rather than having a lobbyist come to you that might have a different perspective, and that perspective may very well be right, but you need someone to come to you with that perspective that can understand and talk to you at a level that would necessarily be either more convincing, or it might be basically at a level that reinforces the original assumption of the CIO.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
And Mr. Chairman, that's essentially how the chief strategy officer, tactical officer worked in Abu Dhabi. Is that person was, basically worked at a level, and the CEO had the final say as whether it went one way or the other, but it wasn't a relationship that was necessarily combative or antagonistic to the CIO, but it was a relationship that was additive to the process.
So on with this position on the Abu Dhabi fund, how big of that's a much larger fund than ours. And so my question is, because we've talked about this before, is that this would be a position on kind of what you just discussed, that are decisions that are made more like on a quarterly or annual basis.
Well,
versus- So in other words, what is he going to be doing in between times other than on those bigger policies?
Well, on your strategic allocation, yeah, that's necessarily on an annual basis, and we go through that process with RBK, and it's a more in-depth process. And that is, as you said, it's more of an annual thing where you gear up for a month, but you would have all the work that you would have during that time period that would accumulate into the report. But then you have event-driven situations like the COVID crisis that are more of a tactical event. And one of the tactical events that the WRS did that I'm aware of, and I think it was in 2018 in December, on the 24th of December, the market hit its low. And WRS was tactically able to put in place, I think, well over $100 million, and they essentially made 35–40% within a matter of a few weeks, because they saw it as a tactical, opportunistic event that they could take advantage of it. And it's more or less in the areas of the opportunistic fund, which is available at 5% across all funds, and that's available on a year-round basis, that a strategic officer, a tactical officer, would be more or less in play. But it's not the only thing they do, and that's why I said that was this particular position is kind of a split position, where a lot of it is taking things off the plate of Patrick so he can concentrate on essentially their investments. And that's really kind of decided by, the collaboration with the IFC. It's not something that comes on from high with the treasurer's office.
And so you said you have a person in mind for this. And so I'm curious about what the qualifications of this person would be in terms of, could they essentially operate and perform the same type of functions that Patrick is performing, but just coming at it from a different standpoint?
I don't know whether or not they actually, even though this person is a CIO in a major fund, whether or not they have the same qualifications statutorily that Patrick does. Because I think we have a time period there where they have to be actively involved in day-to-day trading. And I don't believe this person necessarily has that aspect of it. But they do have the background of running a very large, successful, I think it's I'm not sure I would qualify it as a hedge fund, but as an investment fund and of their own.
Talk about the need for both a CEO and the strategic chief strategy officer. If you got one, which one is more important?
I think they're the both. I think they're both depending on what person is out there and what skill sets they have. And, and frankly, if there's the capacity there or the opportunity to have flexibility, if we found an exceptional chief operating officer, that had just outstanding ability to hit the ground running and offer value on day one when they walk in the door, to me, that is almost level with the CEO. And that's.
Then the question is on on the chief strategy officer, CEO, or a COO? Do they participate in the compensation program?
I think they'd have to if you're going to get top quality people.
Okay, go ahead. And just so everyone knows, the co-chair and I have a meeting at 2:30. So what we'll do is take a break at 2:30 and come back at 2:35. If we are not back, then we'll probably just continue for you guys to finish up. So I don't think there's much more questions that I have, but I just want to make everyone aware of that. And I think my vice chair is also supposed to be at that meeting. So. Okay, let's go.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we
rolling.
can be quick.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
right.
The next unit
up.
is 0902 on page 71. The governor approved the standard budget, and there's one exception request starting on the bottom of 71 and going to 72. This is the position that we had originally requested to be refilled or reclassified, a vacant position, but we're going to fill that one. And so should you consider this request for an accountant, we would require a position. The next unit is 0905. This is investment. I called it administration, but really this is where the build out, from the build out, we received an accountant. We received the Jeanette position for infrastructure technology. And the standard budget was approved on page 75. And there is an exception request starting at the bottom of that page and going to 76. This was also a request to move a position from unit 101 to this for a compliance officer, and this is the one the governor did approve. Finally, the last unit is 2001 on page 80. The governor did approve. This is Native American motor vehicle exception. And the governor approved this standard budget, and we have two exception requests similar to the veterans exemption budgets. The first one is on page 80. And this is effective immediately so that we can reimburse the counties for Native American tax exemptions. We actually don't usually have to ask for exceptions in this unit because we've always been adequately funded. However, it sustained those budget reductions. And so we are short. The difference between this program and the veterans exemption is that the veterans say we shall reimburse the counties, whereas the language in statute on this program is permissive and it says we may reimburse. That does not negate the fact that that these counties have an expectation of receiving these funds because they traditionally have. So we did request that effective immediate exemption on page 81, exception, excuse me, on page 81 to make up the difference in this biennium, and then a subsequent request at the bottom of 81 carrying on to 82 for next biennium, for the 23-24 biennium, and accounting for an increase. And the governor again approved that with one-time money.
So, Don, I'm curious, I don't see any significant increases in your hardware software. So with the Broad Ridge upgrade and continuing to working with Aladdin and the other one that you talked about, I take it that those are already ongoing incorporated costs as a practical matter.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
So the other question, in terms of raises, because you gave certain raises last year that they're essentially to some degree outside the model, or outside, basically stepped out of the process of being reviewed and approved by A&I for certain positions. But my question is, for your current folks, how many of them are within the mean of the 2017, talking about your back office folks or your accountants or your CPAs, or what you anticipate those additional costs would be, or what will be needed to bring them up to the position categories that the governor is talking about, the mean of 2017.
Mr. Chairman, so I heard you ask the state auditor the same question, and we did get this printout from A&I. And let me just be clear, we can't give raises outside of A&I. They have to approve every single thing. And as I told you, we have form after form that we have to submit and sign and go through the process. So that's simply not accurate. And as I look at this form that they did provide to me, we currently have 15 employees that are not at 2017 MPP, the midpoint. And we would have 18 folks that would fall under the proposed 2020 a midpoint.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna, go ahead. We need to recess because we're late for this meeting. So go ahead and ask the question, but we might sneak out. Okay. So we're going to stand in recess for 10 minutes. And if we don't get back, and if we still are questions for Kurt, then you go ahead and ask him. Yeah. Okay. We'll recess, yeah, well, because we don't know how long this is going to take. Apologize for up and running.
getting ahead of myself. Any other questions for the treasurer or for Don Williams? Committee, anything else? Nothing? Well, I feel like you got off light. You're welcome. All right, next up, we're going to take Kevin Hibbard on his budget. We're going to take him out of order. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Thank you, Don. Kevin, what's your department number?
96. Would it please the chairman to have me sit in another seat, or is it okay if I speak from here?
I think you can speak from here, and I think you should take it as a sign of confidence that so few people need to listen to your budget presentation.
You know, I was
For
gonna
lack of
say-
interest, it's because of confidence, Kevin.
There's a couple things. I don't know that there's anybody that has been doing this for as long as I have and has been experienced in the Joint Appropriations Committee. But it is a
Don
pleasure to be
Richards.
here.
No.
Certainly is.
Oh, wow. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So it is a pleasure to be here, and I will be brief. I'll walk you through the budget. It's not overly exciting, but I do want to point out a couple of things. And
Before you start, Don, do we have anybody else lined up behind Kevin? Okay. Thank you. Please go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just briefly, some of the responsibilities that Joint Appropriations Committee might not know that the State Budget Department manages. The budget's sure the standard budget we prepare, including the Chapter 17, and improvements on the Chapter 17 are in the State Budget Department's strategic plan, and we'll be talking about a little bit about those. Nationally, we work with the agencies on their budgets to facilitate the government middle of the budget and provide the profile. In this year's budget, also in the strategic plan, a lot of agencies have asked for federal funds or special revenue that they normally B11. That helps us dramatically in efficiency, just not having to do a B11. But also when you think about the Chapter 17, when you compare the actual expenditures to the budget amount, when you do the B11, then it confuses the actual expenditures because we can't delineate the expenditure on a B11 and appropriation expenditure. So if we get it appropriated, then we have a comparison of apples to apples. And that's what we want to do. We want to cut down a number of B11s. So you're going to see this throughout the conversations when we get to the agencies like Department of Health, Department of Family Services, special revenue agencies like state parks. We're going to appropriate and it'll be more transparent. The State Budget Department also does the federal cash management. Basically, this is how that works is we get money in advance. We don't have a whole lot of those places, or perhaps we've overbilled the Fed and we pay them back. There's a calculation that we have to go through with all the agencies to see that the interest on those earnings would be provided back or paid back to the federal government. I don't really recall an amount greater than $3,000 for the enterprise for years. So we're doing a really fine job on that. We also do the statewide cost allocation. That was going to be important when we talk about the consolidation of HR and the fact that we're going through that with the statewide cost allocation. We have a robust training process with the agencies to bring them up to speed on any changes that we might make in budget instructions, but also to help those folks that are new. And we also provide a little bit of role-playing Joint Appropriations Committee preparation for those folks that never participated. We manage the CARE status of funds. I talked about that earlier today. We also manage the ARPA status of funds and ARPA reporting and the consultant contract. Turnover for the last year, we've been very lucky, 0%. The previous year, we had 4 people, 1 retirement, 3 that took promotions. A couple of those folks are chief financial officers, and you'll be seeing them in a couple of the agencies. We are pleased to be the training ground for folks to help them have a selection for chief financial officers, but it is burdensome when we have turnover. Representative Nicholas has been asking the question about where we're positioned with the market. My market, there's not going to be a change. We have 6 budget analysts at the 11 level, that'll be 14.5%. We have 1 at the 12 level, it'll be 12.5%. And my associates to my right would be 6.2%.
Tell me what the percentage is, 12%, 6%, that's what?
Yeah. So 6 for FIB 11, 6 of those people, 14.5%. Yeah, so we have, total staff. And then 1 FIBD 12 for 12.5%, 1 at FIBD 14 is 6.2%, and mine is no. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's just a brief introduction with the processes, and hopefully I've anticipated the questions. I know I've already assisted you in answering this. If you go through to page 3 of our budget, what you'll see is.
Before you move on, Kevin, I think the other question that Representative Nicholas had was have you adjusted the pay on any of your employees?
Mr. Chairman.
And where they are relative to market?
Correct. We have one area where if you go to my organizational chart on page 8, I'll show you that. So you see my job is the director, and then you'll see moving to the left and then down the senior budget analyst position 004. This individual is one of the ones that's 14.5%, but we did give her supervisory responsibilities when we set up the 2 AWAC positions that are time limited for the biennium for the operations and maintenance and reporting of ARPA dollars. So that individual is receiving additional duty pay while we have those AWACs for supervision. Other than that, there are no changes in salaries.
Mr. Chairman.
This individual, senior budget analyst 004 is 14.5%.
Correct.
And the 14.5% means what again?
That's below market.
Okay, gotcha, below market. I didn't catch that. All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you'll go to page 3, what you'll note is the state budget department has a base budget of 2.4 million, standard budget 2.4 million. We have an exception request of 114,000. And you'll note that the lion's share of our budget is people. It takes people to analyze budgets and build and maintain them. We do have some 200 series. We provided printing for the budget books that you'll see. We got a really good deal on those. Last year, we had to go out of state and get them printed, and it was really quite time consuming, but we released RFPs and everybody bid. And then we actually, the outfit that can actually provide it to us cheapest and quickest and best turned out to be YDOT. So YDOT, thank you for printing the budget books. We have some 400 series money, we have some 900 series money, and I'll be talking about that, but basically the 900 series money is IBARs, our internet budget system.
Are we on page 13 now then?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have IBAR's hosting, $52,000 increase that we're asking for. Actually, on the hosting aspect of this, it's been 6 years since we've had an increase in hosting. Our consultant Affinity has been very helpful for us. The next item is IBAR's maintenance Oracle license.
Let me ask you about the hosting. In fact, don't their costs go down every year? You know, the old rule about technology, it doubles in capacity and halves in price every year.
That's
10 years.
That's absolutely what we experience. You know, that is strange for this one that we're actually having to have an increase. Jokingly.
Maybe you ought to get that woman out of the auditor's office to negotiate.
By the way, Edie is a fabulous negotiator. She helped us with the contract and the contract selection for Kristen Allen Larson for the ARPA administration. Auditor Racines was very true in the statement that she is an awesome negotiator.
Okay.
So priority number 2, IBAR's maintenance and Oracle licenses. Basically, it's the same gig, but to be internet active to where we can have everybody working on the budget all the time at their desk, you need to have a platform for the internet. And that's what Oracle provides us. And there's an increase for them as well. The next priority number 3, Microsoft licenses, 365, $3,600. The next one is Adobe Acrobat Pro. We use that constantly, working on documents, and that's $3,317.
Please.
Thank you. So it's, the request mentions it's no longer under the umbrella of licenses being, I don't, could you explain that for me? How, what causes something to fall outside the umbrella?
What that means is that we are now the state budget department and we're paying for our own licenses rather than A&I.
But aren't we still the state of Wyoming? I mean, I think we'd all be under the umbrella of the state of Wyoming.
Yes, I think the terminology could be clearer by saying that the state budget department is going to be paying for the licenses, and historically A&I was paying for that.
I see. Okay, now I get you. All right, please.
But there's no change in rate.
No.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, I'm gonna ask you to go back just briefly to page 13. And under C, justification, it says IBARs will be shut down May of 2021. So that's already taken place.
What it means is that if we don't pay the piper, we were not going to have an IBAR system. Pay to play, right?
So, well, we're past May of 2021. Follow
Yeah.
up, please.
Yeah, please.
So we're past May of 2021. So I guess,
Yeah, let's make that May 2022.
okay, thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Both on the Microsoft and the Adobe, that they're no longer under the A&I umbrella. So this being a technology request, it comes as an exception regardless. But would we theoretically then see a reduction in A&I's budget for these
Mr. Chairman.
this number of subscriptions because they've been moved out of A&I's
Good question.
house and moved into the budget department's house?
Mr. Chairman, that would be correct.
Theoretically correct.
Theoretically correct. I do not believe that A&I has taken a reduction on their half of this, on their side of the fence, but we needed to have it in our budget so we could pay for it.
Thank you. Proceed, Kevin. I
So
think we're on page
15.
15. Yeah, I think we finished up Adobe Acrobat Pro.
So priority number 5 is the budget book changes. We discussed, I pointed that out today on Homeland Securities, where we have the half position, where historically we weren't able to truncate the position in partials. So what we had an opportunity to do is you guys, the legislature allowed us to have some carryover so we can implement the NAFR and the B11 process. And we're going to hold that back a little bit because all the B11 work that we're doing with CARES and ARPA and everything else isn't going to be necessary when we go to the NAFR B11 after we're out of it. So we didn't want to over design and overpay, but we used a portion of that money to fix the IBAR situation where we're not showing you partial portions of positions, because remember, it was a really good question last year. It says, how can you take a position from 0? Well, it was rounding that IBARs doesn't show. So now we've corrected that. So in this case, we've already paid for that correction, the $9,500, but we're asking if we can have it back so that we can go forward with the NAFR B11 process. Once we get out of the ARPA CARES process, because it's overly complicated, it's overly intimidating, and I don't want to pay for something that we're not going to have when we get out of it. So basically, that's 9,500.
Will you be carrying it out just to tenths or to hundreds?
Thousands. Mr. Chairman, I actually believe it's at 50%, the 50 percentile. So, Mr. Chairman, the next request is priority number 6, which is TRP computers. This is the replacements for the State Budget Department, and we will be replacing our computers in the very tail end of this upcoming biennium.
Kevin, do you really notice a degradation in performance at a 5-year life cycle with your applications?
Mr. Chairman, I do, but I think more importantly that I'm going to use the adage of the security on a computer is predicated on your basement window in a flood having a screen. We need to make sure that we keep with our technology because a large portion of the life cycle is predicated on making sure that we have the security that we need on all these devices. And then also there's warranty issues that we have to pay if we go too far past the process. I think the warranty, they warranty 3 years, and we pay for an additional 4th year. So there's warranty issues, and then it gets more expensive as more machines degrade and decline and go off past that warranty scenario. So I do support ETS's position on their replacement cycle.
Okay, number 7.
Mr. Chairman, if LSO is missing paper this next couple of weeks, then don't look any further than the State Budget Department. We are scavengers in a lot of things. This item is a scavenger paper. We're asking for $1,500 so that we can purchase paper. A lot of the printing that we do are draft documents and work for this department. And when we do hearings with the governor's office, et cetera. Office furniture, again, Mr. Chairman, we're asking for $1,500 to replace 3 chairs. My office chair is broken. It honestly is. It's been broken for 1.5 years. But so
I think it
we're
provides a real tangible symbol of the parsimony with which you're administering the office, and a good example for all employees.
the parsimony is appreciated. And the fact that you didn't say it's because the COVID-15 that caused my chair to break is also appreciated.
Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman, that's the State Budget Department's budget.
any other questions for Kevin? So Kevin, I remember when you were in here lobbying strongly for this, and I had supported it. I had some hesitation, but have your expectations been met, and what benefits do you think, have the benefits that you hoped for been realized?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I did advocate for the conversation when we had originally we went through the reorganization statutes that's the state of Wyoming has. There's a step process you go through reorganization. So what we introduced first 2 years ago was simply a request for reorganization, which was approved by the legislature. Then we followed up with the codification of the law last year. We have seen a lot of opportunities, and it's a lot better process. The governor spoke highly of the State Budget Department from the Taxpayers Association as far as the B11, the transparency process, trying to get things appropriated without doing B11s. And also the statewide cost allocations where we're collecting, we're meeting the Craig estimates on the statewide cost allocations. We're seeing that agencies are paying for their share of the administrative costs. Basically what's taking place is, for example, the State Budget Department is under the statewide cost allocation. And what we do is that we take that budget and we parse it out to all the agencies predicated on the size of their budget, the overall size of the budget. And then we bill those agencies, and those agencies include the Department of Transportation and the special revenue agencies, the federally funded agencies, the Game and Fish, because what that does is it brings back special revenue and federal funds into the general fund. So on that level, yes. And I'll be having a conversation about some improvements that we could do to the indirect cost allocations on a couple of agencies. And you'll be hearing in terms of that so that we can do a better job at taking advantage of the efficiency of having indirect cost allocations or statewide cost allocations rather than direct bills, for example. So those are a couple of examples of yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
really a follow-up to your question, Mr. Chairman. And Kevin, what kind of surprises did you run into in the course of kind of making this transition? Any surprises?
Honestly, I don't think there were surprises. And the explanation of that is that I was the deputy director for A&I for budget and economic analysis, and that was for about 6 years. And then now the director for 2. So really wasn't a whole lot of surprise for me.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kevin, in your software, as you know, you've been through these hearings where somebody will ask for something and the committee will say, oh, it's one time. Don't put it in your ongoing budget. And every once in a while, there's an error and they come back with it in their ongoing budget. Is there not a field in the I-bars or whatever where they flag it as don't make this an ongoing request? I assume it's pure inadvertence when they take a one-time and turn it into a standard.
Yes, there are 292, for example, is ongoing, and we can make it one time or we can make it ongoing. The features in the system allow us to accomplish that.
So it sounds like they're inputting it wrong from the very get-go then?
Yeah, or we could be making a poor decision on it on the front end. But one of the things that I've been discussing with the Joint Appropriations Committee for a few years is that one of the things that I would like to see us accomplish a little bit differently, and I've been talking to interim director Timothy Sheenan about this as well. One of the things that you were pointing out is this, that we have an implementation of a software package. Maybe it's a significant one, like what we're working with DFS now. And we have an estimate for what we think the maintenance of fees are going to be. And we put that estimate into the budget in the 292, but after the implementation, it actually is a different number. Maybe it's a lower number, but we never cycle back to say, well, what is your actual maintenance cost? So there's 2 ways of tackling this. I'm not going to advocate for us to standardize maintenance service costs until such time as we got performance, meaning we actually implemented the software and it's working, and now we'll consider standardizing your maintenance costs. That makes more sense to me rather than putting it up front on an estimate. And I've talked to the Joint Appropriations Committee about that in the past. And also the last meeting that we had with the Joint Appropriations Committee, I suggested, and I'm working, collaborating with the strike force for ARPA, that I'm strongly advocating for us to do an inventory across the expanse of the enterprise. What I mean by that is, what are we paying for in IT everywhere? And where is it in the budget? Just like you say, is it in the standard budget? Is there a maintenance service cost? Do a full-blown inventory of our IT. And I shared with you that document from a consultant that showed you what Idaho did. It's full-blown. It tells you everything that you're paying for, how you're paying for it, and what services it does. Then the next step would be, once we have that inventory, is to do a fit gap. And what is a fit gap? Saying, well, this agency has an accounts receivable package that they're paying for. Well, doesn't the state auditor's office, aren't they paying for a package that have accounts receivable? Well, yeah. So why don't we use that rather than paying for accounts receivable separately? That would be the fit gap. So the fit gap, first of all, what it would do is saying, here's what you're paying for. Can you put it on your ERP system and then not have to pay for it twice? The next step of the fit gap is say, okay, we got 5 agencies doing this and the ERP system will not handle it. What's the best solution for the enterprise? An enterprise solution. That's the next step of the fit gap. And once we have all that information, then we're going to be much better prepared to have really good conversations on IT in the state of Wyoming. So I'm advocating for a package, and nationally it'll be presented. Either it will be asked for and approved by the governor or it won't be, but I'm advocating for us to do an inventory and a fit gap with ARPA dollars.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Mr. Hibbard? All right, Mr. Hibbard, you got off light.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Don, let's take a look at the schedule and see where we are. It's rare that we get done early and so I want to make sure we know what the lineup is because who works the phone when you've got to move people up or hold them back on it? Is that just an email by Elizabeth or?
You know, today Mary Lee has done that and she's in the adjacent room.
Okay,
We also, all four of us email agencies as well.
okay. So we did have Kevin down for Thursday, December 2nd. We can cross him off. And we got clear through the state treasurer's office, so.
Yes, so tomorrow will be the morning section and it's really not perhaps split as it is on the agenda, but the Department of Administration and Information and the boards and commissions. Among the boards and commissions, there are about 9 that have exception requests. They'll all be here if you have any questions for them. But I anticipate, based upon some conversations with the chairs, you might have a longer conversation with the Gaming Commission. They have some sizable exception requests, as does the Real Estate Commission. And the rest of them that have exception requests are relatively modest. A&I was selected early in these budget hearings because of their impact on statewide enterprise activities such as group insurance, HR consolidation, leasing, utilities, general services, and the like. In the afternoon, having
Before you leave that, Don, Mike handles A&I. Who handles the boards and commissions on the House side?
Well, they're all split up. But I have.
I see. Do you know that, what are the 9? Because if that's it, I mean, I want to make sure that somebody doesn't want to call out one of the other agencies before we say, let's just knock off 7 real fast and concentrate on the other 2. But it sounds like, do you have any questions about, other than the agencies, the boards and commissions that have an exception? Oh, you don't? I thought you had boards and commissions. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. You pardon?
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair. I don't have, and I have the boards and commissions. I don't have.
Right, and of the boards and commissions, do you have any concerns other than the 9 that have exception requests?
No, I think.
Okay.
And I don't even have concerns about most of the exception requests, but I think there may be questions about it. So
Yeah, so absent somebody opening up
No.
anything other than the other 9.
So, Mr. Chairman, the agencies or boards with exception requests are Agency 18, the Real Estate Commission, Agency 19, PTSB, Professional Teacher Standards Board, Agency 33, Board of Cosmetology, and I'm repeating these just because they're split on the House side. Agency 38, the former Parimutuel Commission, now Gaming Commission. Agency 43, the Dietetics Licensing Board. Agency 58, which is the Board of Examiners of Speech and Language Pathology. Agency 59, Board of Pharmacy. Agency 78, Mental Health Professions. Agency 79, Board of Nursing Home Administrators.
So with the Gaming Commission, the real estate, we want to try and get those 7 knocked off, and so they'll be here. And I'd ask everybody to take a look at those 7 exception requests, see if there's anybody else you want. If there's anybody else, any other boards and commissions anybody wants, they should email you ASAP.
Mr. Chairman, I think most of them will be here. About half of them are administered by the Department of Administration
Okay.
and Information.
So Gaming Commission and real estate, and so you think that'll take us to lunch? Gaming Commission, probably quite a while.
Yeah, and excuse me, I did misspoke. Although their budget is embedded there, we have actually set aside specific time on a separate day for the Gaming Commission, anticipating a lengthy discussion.
So we won't be doing Gaming.
We will
Commission.
not be doing everything else.
So it's just the real estate board. Well, that might go fairly quickly. Of course, A&I will take a while. Bob, we're just trying to look ahead on the schedule. Then ETS is ready to go for Thursday. If by chance we got done early, do we want to start in on the court system or knock off for the day?
I don't know what the court's schedule is, but
Usually tied up. Yeah. We want to check.
Is there anything else we could bring up? that we could move forward on Friday?
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a few more we can reach out to. We did so today, but it's difficult to rearrange schedules, and some of them have out of Cheyenne individuals, you know, they have to travel
Yeah.
from Laramie or Casper.
So my guess is the OAH,
Law examiners,
they will probably be traveling.
they would be. Sharon?
Is Sharon presenting?
Yeah, Sharon Wilkinson.
Oh, yeah, she's here. She would, that would be fairly easy.
And then Wendy Soto, the executive director of the Commission on Judicial Ethics, isn't she here?
She is, although her board is coming in, I believe. So we could try a couple of those
I
Office of
see.
Administrative Hearings and law examiners to lighten up the load on
Okay.
Friday.
Yeah,
Then-
that's a real simple budget, and it's not gonna take
Yeah.
half an hour. So,
And that may be the most we can do unless we want to try and get the AG on standby. You want to do that? Well, and how much time we think we'll take on them.
so they've got 15 minutes for logs on her, so that, she could do it on Thursday. If we just get her notice.
Yeah, the law examiners on Thursday.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're just going through the schedule.
Just doing
We're
calendar.
just trying to figure out where we are.
You're fine. Get your seat warm for you.
So what do we do, Don? So we're gonna try and, gaming commission is coming later, so we just have the real estate unless somebody wants somebody else brought in, A&I, ETS. And if we get done early, then we're gonna try and bring in law examiners,
OAH.
OAH.
Actually, we might want to contact the court.
If they're available,
I'd be surprised if they're gonna take 2 hours.
I would be surprised if they are too.
We already know what they're gonna ask for, and the budget's what we're gonna
Yeah,
do
why don't
mostly
we,
on.
why
are
don't- can we contact the court and see if Justice Fox might be available at 4 tomorrow? And then let her know that might, you know,
It might go quicker
it
for her
might
that
go
way.
quicker, and if we get bogged down, then we'll just stay at 8.
And similarly,
Yeah,
district
ask her,
courts, I think that's gonna be Steve Sharp.
Ask her how much
It's
she
only
charges for
15
witness
minutes.
fees.
But just inquire.
Yep, will do.
Where's district court? Yeah, if that's somebody local, all right.
And if he can't make it, I'll take us to district court.
All right, I think that's it.
Mr. Chairman, a few more just housekeeping items. For those of you who are reading ahead, we have made a couple of adjustments on Monday, December 6th. The district attorney in Laramie County has a capital case that has been scheduled. So she has been removed from the agenda at 1 p.m. And we've already replaced her with the Fire Protection and Electrical Safety Agency.
So she's not available for Friday?
That is correct.
We think about, we're just gonna see how it goes, but potentially that might be pushed off till January. She's got a capital case.
No, we're actually moved her to Friday. So she's going to be 1 day early,
Day after tomorrow.
correct? And then her previously scheduled position at 1 p.m. on Monday will be inserted with the fire protection and electrical safety.
Any other changes looking ahead, Don?
What about the district attorney for Natrona County?
They're okay at that time, and they do have to travel. Two more just comments, and you'll see this in your inbox. One of them you already have. A&I's handout, it will be number 13. Might be particularly helpful because there several of your questions today commented on what % of market and how many positions were less than market. And those are all identified in handout number 13 going forward. And then handout number 64 has some information regarding all of the IT requests by agency.
You might want to call the district attorney and ask her and see if they want to come up Friday. so that they go together. Because I think that and it's useful to have them go one after the other, just because they're similar budgets, similar personnel. And that makes, and my guess is we're gonna get to them fairly early in the afternoon.
We'll make that call.
Don, what was the number of those handouts? Is it 42, 23?
13 and 64.
And that, which one was that? That was
A&I.
for
A&I, A&I 64 and, no, A&I is 13 and ETS is 64. Well, so mine has the district attorney for Laramie County twice here, once on Monday and,
They moved her to Friday because she won't be on Monday.
okay. This is the 29th, pretty good. All right. What else?
So what time did you, I'm sorry, I'm catching up. What time did we schedule Laramie County for Friday?
So Laramie County will occur after the AG. And we will try to advance all of these folks because several of them will be hopefully moved to Thursday. So giving you an opportunity to wrap up earlier on Friday.
So give us the order of call on Thursday ETS. I don't know if we're going to bring anybody up early. Do we think we might bring people up earlier on Thursday?
Yeah.
So what's our lineup, Don? Or are we just going to be flexible and see how it goes?
I think Thursday will be the Department of Administration, Boards and Commissions, ETS, and then we'll try to slot in. This is potential on deck with the law examiners, Office of Administrative Hearings, and possibly the Supreme Court.
Okay. We don't want to break early Friday. We just want to bring more agencies on extra early. Okay.
That's not funny.
Starts creeping up.
Well.
I swear, I just want to have under attention.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kevin, how did they treat you? With that, anything else we need to do today? All right, we'll stand in recess until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Adjourn for the day.